5,300 years ago, a man was murdered on a mountain, an arrow in his back, alone in the snow. Nobody came for him, nobody knew his name, and in 2023, his DNA broke the entire history of a country he had never even heard of. His name, the scientists decided, was Ötzi. They studied him for 30 years. They thought they understood him. They were wrong. Because when his genome was finally retested with modern equipment, it revealed something nobody was expecting. Not a fact about him. A fact about Italy. A secret the country has been hiding for 19,000 years, and almost nobody has ever been told. Here is the truth no history book teaches you. A man born in Milan and a man born in Sicily share less DNA than two strangers from opposite ends of France. Same country, same passport, same language, different bloodlines. Inside one nation, the size of a single American state, lives the highest genetic diversity in all of continental Europe. And until very recently, science had no idea why. The reason is geography. Italy is a peninsula, 1,200 kilometers of land, jutting into the middle of the ancient Mediterranean. For 19,000 years, every major human migration in the Western world passed through it, around it, or into it. Ice Age survivors hid in its mountains. Bronze Age horsemen crashed in from the north, and empires from 3 continents fought to control its coastlines. Each one left bodies, each body left DNA, and the DNA stayed. The result is a country built like an archaeological dig, layer upon layer of ancient people, frozen inside the cells of every modern Italian. To understand who they really are, science had to unlock 3 doors. Behind the first is a fault line running invisibly through the country. Behind the second is an island where the Stone Age never ended. And behind the third is a civilization that gave Rome its alphabet, then vanished. We are opening all 3. In 2019, geneticists at the University of Bologna did something nobody had ever attempted. They sequenced the DNA of 1,616 Italians from every single region of the country. They wanted one answer. They got 2. The data refused to come together. The map kept fracturing. And when the team finally accepted what they were seeing, the conclusion was undeniable. Italy was not 1 population, it was 2. And the line between them was older than Rome. The Italians in the north carried the DNA of Ice Age survivors. Hunter-gatherers who had hidden in the Alps 19,000 years ago, while most of Europe lay buried under glaciers. Their bloodline never left. The same villages, the same valleys, for 19 millennia. But the Italians in the south carried something foreign, something Eastern. Their DNA did not match mainland Greece. It did not match the Balkans. It matched the islands of the Aegean and the ancient coast of the Near East. How did the Eastern Mediterranean end up inside southern Italians? The answer is one of the largest migrations in ancient history, and almost nobody talks about it anymore. 8 centuries before Christ, Greek settlers began arriving on the shores of Sicily and Calabria, not as travelers, as colonists. By the year 600 BC, there were so many of them that the Romans later named the entire region Magna Graecia, Greater Greece. They built cities. They had children. They never went home. But the Greeks were only the beginning. Before them were the Phoenicians. After them came the Romans. Each one left bodies. Each body left DNA. And then, in the year 827 AD, an Arab fleet landed on the western coast of Sicily. It was supposed to be a single raid. It became a 250-year occupation. They built palaces in Palermo. They taught the locals to grow citrus and rice. They brought astronomy, mathematics, and an entire alphabet of new words into the Sicilian language. And when the Normans finally drove them out in 1071, the Arabs left something behind that no army could take with them: their blood. It is still there today, in 2 million Sicilians, from a single occupation that history barely remembers. The first door is open. The south was conquered again and again by every empire that wanted the Mediterranean. But that still leaves the north, those Ice Age survivors with their 19,000-year bloodline. If their ancestry really has lasted that long, then somewhere on the peninsula, There should be a place where time stopped completely. A place where the past is still alive. A place where the Stone Age never ended. There is. And it is not on the mainland. 180 kilometers west of the Italian coast sits Sardinia. 2 million people. Mountains that almost no road can cross. And inside her people lives a secret that the rest of Europe has lost. Modern Sardinians are the closest living relatives of the Stone Age farmers who first brought agriculture to Europe 7,000 years ago. Not their descendants, their closest living relatives, the Neolithic, walking around in the present tense. How is this possible? 5,000 years ago, a wave of horsemen rode out of the Eurasian steppe. The Yamnaya, a nomadic people from what is now Ukraine and southern Russia. They flooded Europe in a single generation. They replaced bloodlines from Spain to Scandinavia. Almost every European alive today carries their DNA. Almost. Because the Yamnaya never crossed the water. Sardinia was an island. The invasion stopped at the coast, and on that one piece of land, the Stone Age was allowed to survive. In a region of central Sardinia, called Ogliastra, sits a village called Talana. Population, 1,000. When geneticists arrived there a few years ago and sequenced the DNA of its people, they found something almost impossible. They had been quietly marrying within their community for so many generations that their entire population shared the kind of genetic closeness usually only seen in small families. They didn't know they were a scientific miracle. They just thought they were Sardinian. And inside, their cells lived a version of Europe that the rest of the continent had forgotten. Here is the part that should not be possible. When geneticists today dig up a 7,000-year-old skeleton in Germany, and they ask the global DNA database which living human matches him most closely, the answer comes back the same every time. A man in Ogliastra. There is a person currently alive on that island whose DNA so closely matches that ancient skeleton that, in genetic terms, they belong to the same lost world. A modern human, alive in 2026, who is, essentially, a Neolithic European. 2 doors are open. The south was conquered. The island was preserved. The picture is starting to make sense. Except there is one more population, one more layer. A people who lived in central Italy 3,000 years ago. They built cities. They painted tombs. They gave Rome its alphabet, its gods, and the engineering secret of the arch. And then they vanished so completely that their language died with them. Until 2021, every textbook in the world told the same story about where they came from. Every textbook was wrong. They were called the Etruscans. They ruled central Italy from 900 years before Christ until Rome absorbed them around 400 BC. Their art was sophisticated, their cities were advanced, and their language was the strangest thing in all of Europe. It was not Latin, it was not Greek, it was not Indo-European at all. It had no known relatives anywhere on the planet, except perhaps a single dialect spoken on a Greek island called Lemnos. For 2,500 years, one question never died. Who were these people? The Greek historian Herodotus had an answer. Writing in the 5th century before Christ, he claimed the Etruscans were not Italian at all. He said they had sailed in from Lydia, modern-day Turkey, fleeing a famine, settling on foreign soil. For 2,000 years, every scholar believed him. It made sense. A strange language demanded a strange origin. The Etruscans, everyone agreed, were outsiders. The story was settled. Until the year 2021, when a German geneticist finally tested it. His name was Cosimo Post, a German geneticist working at the University of Tübingen. His team extracted DNA from 82 Etruscan skeletons buried across central Italy. They sequenced every genome. They ran every comparison, and the result rewrote 2,000 years of accepted history in a single afternoon. The Etruscans were not from Turkey. The Etruscans were not migrants. The Etruscans were genetically identical to the Romans living right next door. Same ancestors, same blood, same DNA, and yet completely different language. Think about what that means. 2 peoples sharing the exact same bloodline, living side by side for centuries, speaking languages so different that one became Latin, the root of half the modern world, and the other vanished without a single living descendant. The leading theory now is brutal in its simplicity. A small ruling elite, perhaps a few thousand people, held on to an older language as a marker of identity, even as their bloodline dissolved into the surrounding population. Genes spread, words stayed. The Etruscans were genetically Italian. Culturally, they were a fortress. Which brings us back to the man in the ice. Because in 2023, when the Max Planck Institute retested Ötzi's DNA with modern equipment, they discovered something humiliating. The original 2012 had been contaminated. For 3 decades, the entire scientific world had been studying a corrupted file. The real Ötzi was someone else entirely. 90% of his ancestry came from Anatolian farmers. His skin was darker than every museum reconstruction. He was likely going bald, and his bloodline matched almost nobody, not even his alpine neighbors. He was a genetic island within an island. A man so isolated that when he died on that mountain, something close to his entire lineage may have died with him. And this is what the science is finally telling us. Italy is not one people. It never was. It is the sediment of 19,000 years of human movement, preserved in the north, conquered in the south, frozen on a single island, locked inside a dying alphabet, and sometimes, just sometimes, buried in the ice. The peninsula did not produce a nation. It collected one. And that man on the mountain. He waited 5,300 years to tell us. We just had to learn how to listen. The Yamnaya, the horsemen who rewrote European DNA. Their story is next.